The pleasures of ancient Roman emperors may seem surprising, even unusual to us, but they go beyond what we might consider entertainment. They allow us a glimpse into a society that, although distant in time, shared concerns about power, morality, and personal relationships. Today, we'll travel to the heart of the Roman Empire to uncover the customs of its earliest emperors. A journey that invites us to question how the actions of these men may have shaped the destiny of an entire empire. If you're ready to learn more about these intriguing leaders, hit like and join me on this journey through history. Let's go. Let's begin with Augustus, the first Roman emperor, a key figure in the empire's history. After the fall of the Republic, Augustus, formerly known as Octavian, consolidated his power following the defeat of Mark Antony at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. His rise to power marked the beginning of a new political system, the Roman Empire. Though the Republic was no more, Augustus presented himself to the people as the restorer of peace and order. Throughout his reign, Augustus implemented a series of social and legal reforms that promoted public morality and family stability. He introduced strict laws against adultery and encouraged monogamy and childbirth among the upper classes. His goal was to make Rome a city of strong, virtuous families. However, what many did not know was that Augustus' own actions didn't always reflect the ideals he promoted. For example, his marriage to Livia Drusilla, an influential woman, was seen by many as a political alliance rather than a personal one, especially since Augustus married her after divorcing his wife Scribonia on the very day she gave birth to their daughter. This union produced no heirs, raising uncertainty about his legacy. To make matters worse, his daughter Julia, from his first marriage, was accused of adultery and exiled to the Trematae Islands, demonstrating that despite his efforts to reform Roman morality, the rules didn't apply to emperors the same way they did to ordinary citizens. Furthermore, Augustus was known for many contradictions. Despite being regarded as a moralist, his private life was filled with love affairs and clear deviations from the very standards he had set. In his later years, Augustus reportedly showed a preference for virgins, some of whom were selected for him by his own wife, Livia. This contrast between his preaching and his practice gives us a more human and complex view of one of history's most influential emperors. After Augustus' death, the throne was inherited by Tiberius, his stepson and successor. At first, Tiberius presented himself as a competent and prudent ruler, but his reign took a dark turn when he isolated himself from the Roman people. In 26 AD, Tiberius retired to the island of Capri, where his darker nature emerged. On Capri, Tiberius withdrew from public life, leaving the administration of the empire in the hands of his prefect Sejanus. This was not merely a retreat from politics, it marked the beginning of a period of decadence and excess. It is rumored that Tiberius indulged his most base instincts on the island, where he hosted orgies and other unrestrained licentious acts. Among his most disturbing habits was that of his so-called little fish, young boys trained to swim between his legs and lick his body, in what became one of the empire's darkest secrets. In addition to these scandalous behaviors, the emperor surrounded his isolation with an atmosphere of perversion. He decorated his rooms with erotic sculptures and paintings and kept libraries filled with manuscripts on sexual practices, which he reportedly used as manuals. The Roman people, largely unaware of these excesses, didn't know how to interpret their emperor's conduct. Tiberius' death in 37 AD was not mourned by most Romans. In fact, many felt relieved by his passing, as the stories of his behavior had gone far beyond what people could tolerate. Despite his reputation as a cruel and strange emperor, Tiberius left a lasting mark on the history of the Roman Empire, representing a figure full of contradictions between imperial power and humanity's darkest inclinations. The reign of Caligula, Rome's third emperor, began with high hopes. He was the son of the beloved general Germanicus and thus enjoyed initial popularity among the Roman people. At first, his rise to the throne was met with joy, as many saw in him a beacon of hope for Rome's future. However, Caligula's story would take an unexpected turn, as he became one of the most feared and ruthless emperors Rome had ever known. In his early months as emperor, Caligula seemed to be the promising leader that Rome needed. He was welcomed enthusiastically by the soldiers, who saw him as the heir of their beloved general and father. However, after falling gravely ill in 37 AD, something changed in him. Upon his recovery, Caligula began to display signs of madness and tyranny, and his rule turned into a series of excesses that shocked even those closest to him. It is rumored that, after his illness, Caligula became a completely different man. He became known for his extravagant luxuries, unchecked greed, and brutal treatment of anyone who dared to defy him. His acts of violence were as unpredictable as his abuse of power. Among the most infamous incidents was his supposed order to appoint his horse, Incitatus, as consul of Rome. This was not just an act of mockery, but a clear demonstration of his disdain for the Senate and Rome's traditional institutions. But Caligula's excesses were not limited to politics. His personal life was marked by promiscuity and perversion. It is said that he committed incestuous acts with his sisters, Agrippina the Younger and Drusilla, and that his court became a center of debauchery. The stories about his behavior are so extravagant that it is difficult to distinguish reality from popular invention. However, what is undeniable is that Caligula instilled fear in the hearts of Romans. Caligula's unpopularity grew as his erratic decisions multiplied, and in 41 AD, after only 4 years in power, he was assassinated in a conspiracy by the Senate, with the complicity of the Praetorian Guard. At the age of 28, his life came to an end, but his legacy of cruelty and madness remained etched in the collective memory of Rome. After Caligula's assassination, the throne was taken by Claudius, the uncle of the fallen young emperor. Though Claudius was considered a clumsy man, with a stutter and physical weakness, he became a surprisingly competent emperor. His rise was so unexpected that many in Rome believed he would be an easily controlled ruler. However, Claudius proved to have a sharp political mind, and during his reign, he achieved several significant advances for the empire, including the expansion into Britannia and improvements to Roman infrastructure. Despite his political success, Claudius's personal life was marked by complex and contradictory romantic relationships, which generated both admiration and scandal. Claudius married 4 times, and his marriages were more about politics than affection. His first marriage to Plotina ended in divorce due to her adultery. His second marriage to Urgulanilla also failed for political reasons, while his third marriage to Valeria Messalina, a woman of great ambition, triggered a series of scandals that would mark Claudius's reign. Messalina, known for her insatiable promiscuity and her skill at manipulating the men around her, eventually had an affair with a senator named Gaius Silius. The scandal was so severe that when Claudius learned of it, he feared that his wife and her lover were conspiring against him. He then decided to have them both executed, a decision that surprised even those closest to the emperor. Despite the betrayals of his wives, Claudius never lost the ability to marry again. His final marriage was to Agrippina the Younger, who, like Messalina, was ambitious and manipulative. Agrippina, great-granddaughter of Augustus, mother of Nero, and niece of Claudius, had the ambition for her son Nero to ascend to the throne. To achieve this, it is believed she poisoned Claudius, thus securing her adopted son's rise to power. Although Claudius's reign was notable for its reforms and the expansion of the empire, his marital decisions and the influence of his wives left an indelible mark on his government. Despite his personal weaknesses, Claudius was able to achieve important accomplishments for Rome, though his private life was always shrouded in controversy. Nero, the last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, came to power at a young age, having been adopted by Claudius at the age of 13. At 17, following Claudius's death, Nero ascended to the throne. In his early years as emperor, Nero was guided by his mother, Agrippina, who had significant influence over his decisions. However, as time went on, Nero began to make his own choices and soon revealed himself to be a man driven by greed, vanity, and a desire for absolute power. At first, his reign was relatively popular. Nero was seen as a young, promising, and somewhat accessible emperor. Nevertheless, the relationship with his mother, Agrippina, which had initially been protective, began to deteriorate. In 59 AD, Nero ordered Agrippina's assassination, seeking to free himself from her influence and consolidate his authority. This act marked the beginning of a series of increasingly erratic and cruel decisions. The relationship between Nero and his mother has been the subject of speculation for centuries. His behavior toward her was described as unusually close, with rumors of incest circulating in the court. Stories of their escapades, such as horseback rides where their clothing drew suspicion, made their bond even more disturbing. After her death, Nero embarked on a series of excesses that included mass persecutions, especially against Christians, whom he blamed for the Great Fire that devastated Rome in 64 AD. The Great Fire of Rome, a disaster that destroyed much of the city, was seized by Nero to build a new imperial palace, the famous Domus Aurea, a symbol of his growing megalomania. However, his erratic behavior and the scandals that erupted around him caused his popularity to plummet dramatically. Nero's reign was characterized by cruelty and extreme luxury, as well as a series of murders within his own family. It is said that he had his own wife, Octavia, executed, accusing her of adultery, and his mistress, Poppaea Sabina, whom he allegedly kicked to death while she was pregnant. These acts contributed to his growing isolation from the Roman people. In the year 68 AD, the political situation in Rome reached a critical point. Faced with rebellion in the provinces and widespread discontent, Nero was forced to flee Rome. He was pursued and, ultimately, committed suicide at the age of 30, leaving behind a legacy of terror and excesses that would endure in the collective memory of Rome. Although his reign ended, Nero's figure remained one of the most controversial in the history of the Roman Empire, symbolizing the decay and self-destruction of a leader who could not control his power. The first Roman emperors left us a fascinating but also deeply contradictory legacy. From the moral laws of Augustus to the excesses and madness of Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, each of these leaders offers us a lesson about power, morality, and the dangers of living above the laws one sets for themselves. These emperors were able to shape the fate of Rome, but at a great cost. Their private lives, marked by scandals, betrayals, and vices, contrasted with the public norms they promoted. The history of Rome, like that of many empires, is full of shadows and lights, of absolute power and internal decay. The emperors, although considered demigods, showed that even the greatest can succumb to their own desires and flaws. Now I ask you, what do you think of these emperors? Do you think their private lives should have been different for Rome to be a stronger empire? What lessons can we learn from their excesses and mistakes? Leave us your comment and share your opinion. And if you were surprised by what you've learned today, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content about the history of Rome.